What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Blitz Sports Media. My name is Blink. I'm here with Steven today. Steven, how are we doing? Welcome back to the stream.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. Another week of football. Here we go. I'm excited for the day.
Yeah, 100%. My camera's got a little bit of something on it. You guys know what we're all about here on these start and sit live streams. I always have a makeshift setup. Nothing is ever consistent with it. So you guys kind of know how that works. Same type of format as we always do. Drop any sort of start and sit questions you have down in the comment section below. We are going to go through those for the next hour, and then we will end this stream, and then I will still be answering questions on Twitter after that. Steven, week 8 is here. We're at the halfway point of the season. What are your thoughts so far about the year overall?
I mean, it's been a crazy year. A lot of unexpected things. A lot of the one thing I'm gonna say that has surprised me the most is I was talking all off season how
Oh no. Oh no. Here, this is not by any doubt surprising right now. Steven's going in and out. We're good. We are gonna just hop right into it, and we will figure out the connection problems with Steven here shortly. And I will go through and host this thing for you guys while Steven figures that out. Xavier Worthy or T. Higgins this week. This one's an interesting one. I do think that while T. Higgins has shown some signs of life, Xavier Worthy is also a good play this week. I think Worthy the last 3 weeks has not topped over 11 PPR points, but I feel like this week against Washington, the Chiefs are going to be able to utilize their speed in order to exploit the Washington Commanders secondary. Meanwhile, T. Higgins gets a Jets secondary without Sauce Gardner, so that matchup is going to be very intriguing as well. I do think out of these two, I'm probably leaning T. Higgins. I think that the volume in the Cincinnati Bengals passing game probably is going to be more significant than it will be for the Chiefs. I think if we're betting on wide receiver twos, T. Higgins is the more talented wide receiver two compared to Xavier Worthy. So I truly believe that T. Higgins might be the play for you, Deontay Thornton Truther, our guy from the Discord. No one better. Appreciate you topping in today. And I think it kind of brings up an interesting point here in week 8 with the amount of bye weeks this week. I know a lot of people are in similar situations in 12 and 14 team leagues to where you are going through and having to start like a Tez Johnson and Alec Pierce, maybe even Jaden Higgins or Jalen Noel. I do like some of those guys, and I do want to try and pull up the DFS spreadsheet for you guys here. So let me get this DFS spreadsheet that we run on our website on this for you guys and kind of take a look at some of these values right here. All in all, though, should be a solid week despite all the buys. So let's get this up here. As you guys can kind of see, navigating through this thing, we do have a lot of good values at different positions here. Bo Nix against the Dallas Cowboys is the one that stands out for me for sure. I think that Bo Nix heading up against that 32nd ranked defense in the Dallas Cowboys, the guy that I find mostly as a must start in every single format this week. He's going to absolutely crush, and I think that a lot of the struggles of Bo Nix should be faded at this time. So I think that it'll definitely be a good moment for him to insert himself in the lineup and find a way to be viable in fantasy football. At the running back position, an interesting one on there is Woody Marks, a player that, has been up and down, a little bit inconsistent, found his way into the end zone last week. I think he's a really strong play this week against the San Francisco 49ers. I think that with Woody, you have to understand you're not going to get a significant amount of touches, and he's going to have to cash in on his limited amount of work in terms of the receiving game and the rushing game. But I think against the 49ers, who have kind of struggled against receiving backs this year, we saw Bijan have a nice game against them last week for sure. So I think that with Woody Marks, he should be in for a nice day in terms of the air. And this kind of goes into the next question here from our boy Noah Stroat, Mickey Mutters, A.J. Brown ruled out, Jalen Noel, Kendrick Bourne, Sterling Shepard. You kind of look at the DFS spreadsheet here and where we like the values this week. And Jalen Noel is the name that sticks out, who had his first viable week in fantasy football last week and is finally starting to overtake that slot position here for the Houston Texans, which is very encouraging for his long-term viability for the rest of the season. So I think with Jalen Noel, he has a plus matchup this week in terms of the slot against the San Francisco 49ers. And without Nico Collins, there's going to be plenty of targets to be thrown around. I think that Dalton Schultz is probably going to be the leading receiver for the team. But if I'm willing to bet on one receiver this week, I'm betting on Jalen Noel to have the best game out of the Houston Texans pass catchers. Now, compared to Kendrick Bourne or Sterling Shepard, I think Kendrick Bourne's way lower on my list, a perimeter receiver going up against Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter in that 5th ranked points per allowed perimeter receivers. I think that I'm fading him this week. Sterling Shepard, on the other hand, he's a decent play against the Saints, who have struggled against receivers throughout the entire year. But I do believe that all in all, Jalen Noel is the play out of that grouping there. We're going to welcome back Steven. Steven, how's the Wi-Fi doing right now?
Oh man, there's nothing can be certain on these streams. There's always something that happens.
There is always something that happens.
And so it just computer shut down using the work laptop. It's hopefully we're good now. Hopefully we're good.
Let's just hope that week 8 is a little bit more effective than our live streams have been in terms of connectivity this year for sure. So
that's how the week is going to go. We're off to a rough start.
yeah. Let's just hope that our bets can hit and have a nice day for us overall.
Absolutely.
Let's get into our next question here with this DFS sheet up. Even if London starts, do I start Mooney over him? London, Mooney, or Tez in this case? Steven, I think if Drake London's officially going to go, you got to get him in your lineup, right?
Absolutely. It's one of those scenarios where you start your studs. You spend a top end pick on London, you're going to start him. Even if he's out there, you're starting him. You don't overthink that one.
Yeah, I agree. You got your stud in Drake London. If he's out there, I don't expect him to be limited by any case. And while I do love Tez Johnson's matchup this week against the New Orleans Saints, I think he is a sleeper play in a lot of leagues. I think that Drake London is a guy that you just have to find a way to get in your lineup. I'm looking at our DFS sheet right now from our guy Danny, and London's within that top 10 range when healthy this week. So I absolutely love his viability this week. So I think that with him, you're gonna want to plug and play him in your lineup, and should be a very, very nice game for him. Rogilo here. Good morning, guys. Full PPR. Devonta Smith, George Kittle, Rashee Rice, Rome Odunze, Emeka Egbuka, and Jake Ferguson. Bench 2. I'm having a hard time deciding because of National Tight End Day. And I'll say this, Steven, I have so many bets at the tight end position right now. I know that the tight ends are going to score. I know that good things are going to happen from them. What are your thoughts for this guy right here?
Yeah, bench 2. That's tough. I'm gonna say Odunze and Kittle, even though it's National Tight End Day and that's like George Kittle's Christmas. I understand that. But I mean, Kittle coming back last week, was not involved at all in the offense. Do I think that will change this week? Yes. But I'm just gonna ease it out. And I like all these other guys more. It's more about the other guys that you get to start rather than Kittle. And then Odunze is kind of quieted off, but I still like him. I think Devonta Smith is going to feast today against that Giants defense with no A.J. Brown. He's having quietly one of his best seasons of his career. And then Jake Ferguson. I love Jake Ferguson this season. He's been a great, amazing late round pick and tight end 1 right now. Just got to keep it rolling. And then Rashee Rice. He's a top 10 receiver every week. He's out there with Mahomes.
Yeah, 100%. I'm 100% locking in Rashee Rice in that lineup for sure. He is going to be great this week. Emeka Egbuka, got to get him in there as well. And then, I'm kind of taking a look at some of the other guys. I think you're right with Odunze. I'm benching him this week just based on the last 2 weeks really struggling and not producing just as much as he has been in the past few weeks. And then you're kind of deciding between, I like Devonta Smith this week. I think with A.J. Brown out, he'll actually have a consistent workload, which is something that's been very volatile this year, especially with the Eagles passing game. But I think that Devonta is going to be in for a nice game. Then it's between Kittle and Ferguson. And while I think George Kittle is going to be in for a bounce back week, I think, but will it top Jake Ferguson this week against the Denver Broncos? You know what? I'm going to go Kittle. I'm going to go the alternate one. And here's why. I saw a stat out there that after Kittle had a game where he basically had a dud under 4 fantasy points, you know what he's averaging in those games, Steven?
What is it?
23 points per game, which is absolutely insane. I know he's facing the Texans. It's a tough matchup. Ferguson's got the Broncos, which is another tough matchup as well. But I'm going to take the guy that has a bit more upside that can win me the week, especially when you're starting Rashee Rice already. He's going to have great volume. Emeka Egbuka is going to have great volume. Devonta Smith's going to have great volume. Go chase the upside with George Kittle potentially. And then in another league, Odunze, Kittle, or Chase Brown. It depends on the format for me. But what about you, Steven?
After that, I'm gonna go Kittle here. With that stat, it's hard to argue that National Tight End Day. Like you said, it's a tough matchup against the Texans. They really have a really stout pass defense, but it's National Tight End Day, George Kittle, and you can't argue with the stats he just provided. So
yeah, all right. Listen, National Tight End Day. I'm going to tell you guys to go with a lot of tight ends this week, but I actually have not Odunze. I have Chase Brown as a must start this week, so I do like him. But out of this grouping, I can't go that. I'm going to go with Odunze in this grouping just because, like, obviously the other league you needed a tight end. I think Odunze has a bounce back, so we're literally just kind of spraying in different players in different leagues. But I do think Odunze has a nice bounce back game this week. And I do like his matchup a little bit more than I do George Kittle's. The Ravens have really struggled against perimeter receivers this year. And while Rome Odunze has not necessarily had the best, 2-week stretch here, I think that, considering Kittle's matchup, Chase Brown has just not found the end zone since week 1. I would go with him in that league if you can choose between 3 instead of just trying to fill your tight end slot there. Our boy Deontay Thornton is back. Deontay Thornton's projected 100 points. Or are you taking Rashee Rice?
I mean, if he's getting 100, if he's projected 100, I'm rocking with 100 points now.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to kind of see what is going to happen with Deontay Thornton in the future. If Jakobi Meyers gets traded, I actually think Thornton is worth picking back up and seeing, what potentially could happen. He had a few targets against KC with Meyers out, so who knows? Maybe he could be viable again. Next question here. Got a league where I need to start 2 or 3 between Ja'Marr Chase and Emeka Egbuka, Rome Odunze. Chase and Egbuka are currently sitting in the starting lineup. Steven, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think you leave it as it is. Definitely you're starting Chase, Egbuka. I want to roll him out there every single week. He's healthy. I know he's kind of had a down past couple of weeks. And then Odunze, like we talked about, he has a good matchup, but has a down couple of weeks. I'm rocking with Chase and Egbuka.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Ja'Marr Chase for sure. You got to definitely trust him after what he's looked like with Joe Flacco this year. I think that, going forward, Ja'Marr Chase has reasserted himself as that, top 5, top 3 type receiver in fantasy football, and you don't have to hesitate putting him in your lineup anymore. He's been that consistent. And then you're kind of deciding between Emeka Egbuka and Rome Odunze. And I know this guy personally, Noah, is a Bears fan, and I know he wants to ride Rome Odunze to the promised land, but Emeka Egbuka is just the more reasonable play right now, I think, especially against the Saints team that's 9th against most PPR points allowed to the perimeter receiver position. Baker Mayfield and company are going to be throwing that football. They haven't been able to run it very well this year, even though I like Rachaad White's matchup. I think that you got to go with Emeka and Chase in this one heading into week 8. Next question here from Ezekiel. Should I roll with Tampa or the 49ers defense this week? Steven, go ahead, drop your thoughts.
Yeah, so I would rock with the Bucs defense here. I know they're on the road, but when I play defenses, it all comes down to the quarterback matchups. 49ers, it comes down to me. It's CJ. Would you rather defense go against CJ Stroud or Spencer Rattler? And I'm taking my chances against Spencer Rattler 10 times out of 10. So I'd be rocking with the Bucs defense here.
Yeah, I think that 100%. I'm rocking with the Bucs defense. I think that the underrated part of this matchup is the Bucs have been really good blitzing quarterbacks this year, and Spencer Rattler, who has really struggled against just pressure in general. I think Kellen Moore's actually done a great job for him this year. He's made things very easy for Spencer, and he's actually looked decent at times. But the biggest thing Spencer Rattler still struggles with is when he faces pressure. What does he do? Kind of folds under it, tends to throw the ball up. Saw last week against the Bears, plenty of turnovers. I think Tampa is the defense you want to go with. And I think with San Francisco, one of the interesting notes with them, even though they've been playing really well, is they have the lowest pressure rate since week 4 when Nick Bosa went out with an injury. So they're finding ways to win games, but they're not necessarily finding ways to get pressure on the quarterback. And obviously CJ Stroud has thrived this year at times when he hasn't faced pressure. Think about that Baltimore matchup, but think when he does face pressure, which is a majority of the games because his offensive line is a peewee football offensive line, if some people want to call it that. But I am rocking with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense in this one. Tyler here, pick one player between Marcus Mariota, Romeo Dobbs and Devonta Smith. This seems like a super flex league, Steven. Tough one here. I like I like two of the three of these guys, but super flex Mariota makes it a little bit interesting. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you first said, "Oh, Devontae Smith," but then you're thinking, "Oh, it's super flex," so you could start Mariota there. I'm, I would just take Mariota here, even though I expect Devontae Smith to have a massive game. I think the safer play is Marcus Mariota. He's got the rushing upside, so he's got a higher floor than Smitty does this week, in my opinion. So I would go with Mariota here in this case.
Yeah, the thing you're kind of chasing here is the floor. And while I absolutely love Devonta Smith and Romeo Dobbs matchups, and I'll kind of talk about them real quick before I get into Mariota. Smith, obviously, no AJ Brown, going to be in for a nice day today. Going to get plenty of volume. Romeo Dobbs, though, 8 targets in 3 straight games, averaging over 17 fantasy points. He's been playing very well. Steelers have allowed the 31st most passing yards in the NFL. So great matchup there. You got 2 guys with great matchups, but the biggest thing you mentioned is the floor for me, right? Even if Devonta Smith has a great game, he's scoring 20 points. Even if Romeo Dobbs has a great game, he's scoring 20 points. For a quarterback, that's just kind of like, okay, that's the standard we expect from quarterbacks is that 20-point threshold. Marcus Mariota, right, he's facing a very tough defense against quarterbacks this year in terms of fantasy points, but the one silver lining for Mariota is that his rushing upside, he's averaged over 30 yards in his 2 starts, 18.8 points in those 2 starts, gets Kansas City, who has really struggled to contain quarterbacks on the ground this year, and that is probably their biggest weakness. So I think with Mariota, he should have a nice day on the ground and should be able to give you that safe floor while also potentially presenting the rushing upside value of Mariota. So in Superflex, I'm rocking with him this week. Next question here. Your guy, Jalen Hurts, or are we going with Indiana Jones this week?
It's crazy. This is just how the NFL season is going. It's crazy that this is a question in week 8. If you ask this week 1, it's like, what are you talking about? But it's a genuine question. I'm still going to go with Hurts here. The passing game has been looking a lot better for the Eagles the past couple of weeks. And, this game I view this as for Indiana Jones here. They're playing the Titans. I think this could be over by halftime, and it could just be a lot of negative game script for Daniel Jones. So I'm gonna take I'm taking Jalen Hurts here for I think the Giants are gonna play this close as they beat the Eagles. They whooped up on us a couple of weeks ago, so it's not a walk in the park like it is for the Colts against the Titans. So I'm taking Jalen Hurts here.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird to hear that the Giants are not a walk in the park for the Eagles anymore. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. All right, but in terms of this matchup, I still have Jalen Hurts in my top 3 quarterbacks this week. I mean, the guy has the safest floor in football by being able to run the tush push. I mean, he's getting 6 points a week, basically guaranteed. Like the guy's going to find the end zone. So I think that Hurts is your guy. I love Daniel Jones, and while I'm thinking like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. I'm starting those guys clearly over Daniel Jones this week. And there's maybe 1 or 2 more guys that I would consider over Jones. The Titans are an elite matchup. Jones already proved this year that, he could play very well against any defense, whether that's Denver or a bad defense like Tennessee, who he already beat up on earlier this year. I do think Hurts, though, despite AJ Brown, still should be in for a nice game. And like I said, he has that safe floor. Like the rushing upside is there for him, and he should have a nice day. So I'm rocking with Jalen Hurts against the Giants. And hey, we might even be getting a high scoring game in this one if Jackson Dart continues to play like he did this one. Woody Marks this week, or is he a trap? Genty on a bye. You never know what you're gonna get with our boy Deontay Thornton asking questions here. All right, let's get to the spicy cloud here. Flacco or Dart? Lamar killing me, dude. I'm in the same boat. It feels like in some of these leagues, like the guys that are supposed to be expected back are just not back, and it's just very frustrating right now. Steven, out of Flacco or Dart, who are you going with?
Yeah, this is a tough one because I personally love Joe Flacco. He's been, he's unk. He's just out there slinging the ball. He's no care in the world. But Jackson Dart, it pains me to say this as an Eagles fan, but I think they found their quarterback for the next, decade plus. So Jackson Dart, you saw what he did against the Eagles. Yeah. He finished as QB3 on the week against the Eagles. I don't see why that can't continue. And this Eagles defense is not the Eagles defense of last season. It's you can attack this Eagles defense. Jalen Carter does not look like the same player, so they're not getting the same pass rush. The pass rush has been non-existent for the Eagles. And you can attack them through the air when there's no pass rush. So I would take Jackson Dart in this instance, and then just pray Lamar's back next week.
Yeah, I'm going Dart too. And the biggest stat for me is like he has been the QB4 since taking over as a starter. And he's also 50 plus rushing yards in 3 of 4 games. During that stretch, he's seen the Chargers, the Eagles, and the Broncos, right? Those are 3 very good defenses in terms of, just in general around the NFL. And he's been very good during that stretch, not really showing his floor. His worst game was actually against the Saints, which is crazy to think about, but still had 50 rushing yards in that game. Dart is a great option for the rest of the year and should be a great play this week against the Philadelphia Eagles defense that has really struggled. You mentioned the pass rush. So they've also struggled on the ground a bit. So that's the first time they won against the Eagles, is they were able to maintain that ground game, running the ball well. And, I think that Jackson Dart will be in for another nice performance this week. John Marshall from Marshall Towing, welcome. I made a big trade today. All right. Nice. I need an anytime touchdown bet. Can you each give me a guarantee? All right, Steven, do you have a guarantee off the top of your head for an anytime touchdown? I mean, it's got to be a tight end, right?
Hey, you know what? If we're gonna go tight ends, first of all, there's no guarantees out here. The only thing that would be a guarantee, the closest thing to a guarantee is Jonathan Taylor this week, but that's no value there. So, if we're going to go national tight end day, I'm going to go with a guy who scored a ton this season. And with AJ Brown out for this week, I'm going to go Dallas Goedert of the Eagles to score this week. I like him and Smitty this week. You take them both straight. I think one of them gets in.
I like that. I like the value in Dallas Goedert.
Yeah.
In that one, I'm gonna take an interesting path here, and I think this one's a little bit of an underrated one in terms of what we're looking at, and it is going to be Kyle Pitts, the guy that everybody hates right now. He's starting to find a little bit of momentum though in the fantasy community. He's had a few good performances this year, but this week he gets the Miami Dolphins, who are one of the worst teams in the NFL at defending tight ends. Kyle Pitts is going to be in for a monster game, and I think that he is going to find a way into the end zone. It looks like Matthew Golden, just getting the notification now, is expected to play today. So for those of you guys that have Matthew Golden, make sure you're locking him in. But if you want to rock the Link and Steven parlay today, make sure you parlay Dallas Goedert anytime paired with a Kyle Pitts anytime touchdown, and hopefully we can make you some money today. Indiana Jones or Caleb Williams here, Steven? Which of these guys are you going with?
See, I would like to play Daniel Jones here, but like I was saying earlier when we were talking about him versus Hurts, I just don't trust the game script here. I think this could be a Colts blowout, like 31-10, and Daniel Jones finishes with 12 points because they just run the ball the entire time. So I'm going to go with Caleb Williams here against that depleted Baltimore defense. I think that Caleb's just going to feast against that defense, and they have the weapons to go attack vertically against that team. So I'm going to go with Caleb Williams here.
Yeah, 100%. I think Caleb's been interesting this year, right? The fantasy production's been there. He has 4 of 6 games over 17 fantasy points. Like that's no joke right there. But it feels like he's not clicking on all cylinders right now. He's missing throws. The reads aren't necessarily coming out great. Like, he's relied a lot on rushing upside to have big games. And I think if you want to go with a safe option, you go with Daniel Jones. But the upside this week with Caleb Williams is something that you could potentially chase. I think the biggest worry for me, the Ravens defense looked a lot better against the Rams the last time we saw his team, and they've had 2 weeks to prepare. So I think it's interesting. I do think that the Ravens' focus should be stopping DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai on the ground, but Caleb Williams, I'm going with him. The upside's a bit higher, but Daniel Jones is a slightly safer option. So go with him, and kind of John Marshall from Marshall Towing back. Daniel or Mac? Daniel Jones in this one. All right, you got to go Daniel against a very tough Houston defense.
Yeah, absolutely. You go Daniel Jones here. I understand. I was just talking down that that game script could outplay him there. But Mac Jones, he's getting a tough deal here. With his top receivers out, and he gets Kittle back. You still have McCaffrey, but that Texans defense, man, they're the truth. I'm going Daniel Jones here.
Texans defense is no joke, man. That's a great unit. They've been shutting down a lot of It's crazy. They are 2-4 right now, and they've only allowed 88 points this year. Like that,
Same.
that's unprecedented. So yeah, I think it's going to be a low scoring game with Mac. I think you go Daniel Jones, who is fighting for an MVP conversation. Tyler is mentioning that spot that we were talking about earlier is for an offensive player. So I think with Kittle and Odunze, it's genuinely a toss up for me. I think Kittle's tough matchup is definitely something you can't ignore. But like I said, I think he does have the upside that you want to chase in terms of fantasy production. And if you feel more comfortable with Odunze potentially bouncing back this week against a weak Ravens secondary, you go with him. All right. Chivalry is king here. Chase Brown or Rico Dowdle, standard league. Who you going with, Steven?
Standard. I'm gonna go with Rico Dowdle here. It paints me as a Chuba Hubbard truther. I think it's Rico Dowdle's job now. I mean, we saw that last week when they're both in. I mean, they both got a good amount of volume. Dowdle had 17 carries to Hubbard's 14, but it was the production they did with those carries that really stood out to me. Dowdle, he actually had some good efficiency where Hubbard did not. I don't think he cracked 40 yards with those carries. So I think it's Rico Dowdle's job now. I think it'll be like a 60-40 split. But in a standard league, I would, Chase Brown's very dependent on those receptions. So I'm rocking with Rico Dowdle here.
Yeah, and while I've been impressed with Chase Brown over the last few weeks, I've actually been impressed with Zach Taylor. Like they're going way more under center. They're committing more to this ground game, and it's helped them be more effective. That's literally what they should have been doing the entire time. But it took them a few weeks and not running the ball for them to figure that out. But I think Chase Brown, I like the matchup this week. I think he has a good game against the Jets, but Rico Dowdle, man, he gets a juicy matchup against the Buffalo Bills, who allowed the most yards after contact this season, one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL, and that adds to the worst rushing defense against running backs in fantasy football, basically. So with the Carolina Panthers, I think that they are going to commit to this run game, especially with Andy Dalton slotting in at the quarterback position. I love Rico Dowdle this week, and I think in a standard league, he's even a little bit more valuable than in half PPR and PPR. So Rico Dowdle, I'm going with him as well. I'm glad we're on the same page with that because that is a tough one and a split for a lot of people's minds. So I'm glad we're on the same page for that one. All right, this one's going to be tough. Shakira or Terry McLaurin? Who are you going with, Steven?
This one, I don't like either of their matchups here. Khalil Shakir, the Panthers defense has been, really, really great against the pass so far this season. So I'm going to rock with Terry McLaurin. I know it's against the Chiefs, who also have a great pass defense, and, Mariota starting at quarterback. But I'm going to rock with Terry McLaurin. I'm just going to go with a better overall player talent-wise and, hope talent prevails here.
Yeah, dude,
it's a tough one. That's the toughest one.
It really is. It really is. And I think, Kansas City has been really good against perimeter receivers the entire year. I think that, you kind of just go with the floor of Khalil Shakir he's going to get 4 or 5 receptions. I think Terry, could genuinely have, 4 points in this one. So I'm worried with Terry McLaurin. He's going to get Noel Williams and Trent McDuffie, who've been really good this year on the outside. And I think a guy that, probably has a better game is probably like Debo. Debo probably has a better game against the Chiefs than, Terry does in that one. So I think just Shakir, he's going against Carolina. The Bills have had 1 week to kind of look at themselves in the mirror and try to figure out what their offensive problems stem from. And maybe they let Josh Allen eat a little bit more. Shakir should be the biggest benefit of that this week. I'm going to go with Shakira in this one. Spicy Cloud back in the chat. Flex Golden, who is now active. Cade Otton or Troy Franklin. Pick 2. Steven, go ahead.
I'm going to fire up Matthew Golden, and I'm going to fire up Cade Otton on National Tight Ends Day. Golden, I like Golden this week. I might, unless I wouldn't start him unless you're in a deep league. But I think I'm betting on him today on his over. If you look back at his past couple of weeks, he's 10 points, 11 points, 13 points. Last week, 8. But I think he's due, and the Steelers they're allowing tons and tons of passing yards. So I think he can hit a deep ball in this game, deep ball or 2 in this game. So I'm taking Matthew Golden, and then Cade Otton, National Tight Ends Day. Mike Evans out, Godwin out. I like Otton.
Yeah, I like Otton too this week. I think the matchup against the Saints speaks for itself. They've struggled against tight ends this year, not in the last 3 weeks. It kind of feels like deja vu from last year. Like Otton, middle of the season, was a dog for about a month and then fell off a cliff. And I see something similar happening potentially this year. But like this week, Otton against the Saints, I love his matchup. Then you're kind of deciding between Matthew Golden and Troy Franklin. And while I think Troy Franklin for a lot of teams is in that plug and play territory, I'm not sure what he does because Sean Payton every single week goes to a different guy in different situations. Last week it was Marvin Mims. The other week it was RJ Harvey. Like other week it's Evan Ingram. Like we don't know what we're going to get from Sean Payton on a consistent basis in this passing game. So with Troy Franklin, I'm definitely hesitant, but with Cade Otton, I'm trusting him this week. Matthew Golden, I think you nailed it on the head. This is a perfect matchup for them to utilize him more. And I understand that the Green Bay Packers offense has just been hyper efficient. EPA looks great, but they have not been good this year. They need to find a way to get their pass catchers the ball, and they need to start, being able to move the ball more effectively. I understand this is what LaFleur does, but I think that Matthew Golden is in for a nice game, and I think he finally gets in the end zone like we've been hoping for quite some time. So I'm going with Golden and Otton in this one. Who should I flex in this one? DJ Moore, Tony Pollard, or Woody Marks?
That's a tough one.
They're basically all kind of grouped together.
Yeah, I was going to say they're all kind of grouped together. I think I'm going to go Tony Pollard here, and that's because of the floor. And look, Pollard, I think his trajectory is going down this week, especially with Tyjae Spears coming back. But, he had 6 catches last week, and, if he can do that again against this defense, they got the Colts. So I think if he gets a few checkdowns, I think he'll be fine. It's more I just like Pollard more than DJ Moore, who seems to just have fallen off a cliff. And Woody Marks, you can't trust him. So I'm rocking with Pollard here.
I'm actually going to go the contrary. I'm going to go Woody Marks here. I think that the matchup against the 49ers and the receptions he could potentially get out of the backfield are enticing for me. Pollard, last week had over 10 fantasy points, but like the guy had 6 carries for 18 yards. He's seen his rushes average. He was averaging 18 carries per game. Now he's only averaging under 10 with Tyjae Spears back. Like the volume's not there for him anymore. So if it's a question between volume, Pollard and Marks, I actually think they finished around a similar amount of total. Then you're kind of deciding between DJ Moore, who actually can't find 10 points to save his life in fantasy football right now. It feels like Ben Johnson has kind of phased him out of this offense after a lot of people, including myself, were excited about his potential outlook in this offense heading into the year. It's just not there anymore. So I think with DJ Moore, out of this grouping, I'm definitely having him off to the side. He's a must-sit for me this week. Tony Pollard, also another sit guy. So I'm going with Woody Marks out of this grouping. All right. Start 2 Superflex, full PPR, Rattler, Cousins, or Justin Fields.
I think out of this, you instantly fire up Fields just because of that rushing upside. And, they're playing the Bengals, so you start any quarterback who plays against the Bengals. And then Rattler versus Cousins, I'm going to rock with Kirk Cousins. I swear, last week I was watching football, and I felt like it was 2014 or 2017 all over again. It was just unk after unk out there, just throwing the rock. So I think that continues this week. I'm taking Kirk Cousins, and I just don't believe in Rattler as a quarterback. So I'm rocking with Fields for the rushing upside, and Kirk Cousins, I think he's got one more in him.
He's got one more in him. He got one more. All right, I'm gonna go with. Damn, this is tough. I'm going with Justin Fields for sure. Like Cincinnati's defense is definitely a matchup I want to target, and I know Justin Fields has been really bad over the last 2 weeks, but bad matchups overall. And I don't think the weapons being around him helps him much, but 50 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown automatically is a good day in fantasy football. Mm-hmm. I think with Kirk and Rattler, it's a lot closer than people think. Oh man, I think I'll take the better matchup. I'll go Kirk too. It really is a toss-up for me. I think Rattler against Tampa Bay is a tough matchup for him overall, but I think that with Kirk Cousins slotting in against the Dolphins, like he's going to have his way. This Dolphins team is completely like just defeated right now in a lot of different ways. And while I do think Bijan will be significantly involved in the game plan, Cousins should have enough viability to have a nice day in fantasy football this week. Dave, another one here. Start 1, bench the rest. Full PPR. Rico Dowdle, Darnell Mooney, Tez Johnson, Isaiah Davis. Who are you going with out of this group?
I'm going Rico Dowdle, and I'm not thinking about it twice. Like we talked about, I think he has the starting job there in Carolina. Mooney, I think Drake London will play, so I'm not touching Mooney. Tej Johnson, I like Tej Johnson a lot as like a sneaky play. Maybe throw a couple props on him. I think Brees Hall is going to play, so I'm not firing up Isaiah Davis. So I'm taking Dowdle and not questioning it.
Yeah, I think out of these guys, I'm going Dowdle for sure. Like you mentioned, Tez Johnson, good matchup this week. I think he has a nice day against the Saints, but Rico Dowdle is the guy that I'm targeting against a Bills defense that has allowed so many yards after contact, so many rushing yards this year. And we saw this, like Kendre Miller against the Bills, and you're like, oh, the Panthers aren't a great offense. They're not a great team. Kendre Miller had over 10 points against his defense on 10 touches. Like there are many guys at the running back position finding good production. And it's going to be a similar situation for me next week is we're going to be like Isaiah Pacheco. Is he a must start? Is Brashard Smith a must start because they're facing the Bills? Like it is a defense that you truly want to target in fantasy football. And that is why I think Rico Dowdle is a guy that you got to get in your starting lineups this week. So make sure you find a way to get him in there. It was between Smith or Mariota for that offensive player. So super fun. Yeah, I think you still go Mariota for that. All right. Evan, go here. Really need some help at wide receiver. The bye week is killing me. Start one half PPR. Alec Manor, Jalen Noel, Khalil Shakir, Josh Downs, or if there are some sleeper names you guys would like to throw them out, let them know. All right. Out of this grouping, who are you going with? You know what? This is a great time to pull up the spreadsheet right here for DFS. Who are you going with out of that grouping? Can you see that comment?
I can't see the comment, but I know I was going to go with Khalil Shakir in that group. Like you said, I feel like he's the safest of those guys. If that's a category of guys I know with the bye weeks where you're just starting, it's like, these guys could get 3 or they can get 12. And you just want to get the safest out of the options. And I'm rocking with Shakir. Like you said, he's going to catch 4 to 5 balls at a floor. So out of those guys, he's the safest one to me. So I'm rocking with Shakir.
Yeah, I think Shakir is the guy that you definitely want to target for sure. Out of that grouping, I think he's clearly the highest guy in terms of my weekly rankings. But out of those guys, Jalen Noel is definitely a sneaky play, and I think that like waiver wire names Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, Alec Pierce, Jalen Coker even is a name that should be viable this week in a lot of leagues. And I actually have to remind myself I got to pick him up in some leagues just before his breakout game. But I think that Khalil Shakir will have enough volume to have a nice day in fantasy football this week. So it should be a nice game for him overall there. All right, Steven, we are waiting for some more comments. So we only have about 20 minutes max left to answer you guys' questions. Make sure you guys are dropping those down in the comments below. We have been slowing down here as of late, which is weird. Hasn't happened. Might be that early time slot. People might still be sleeping right now, so late at night on Saturday. But Steven, we kind of talked about best bets earlier. Are there any other names that you like this week that we haven't really talked about today to have a nice game that we could potentially throw some money on?
I was thinking one guy, Evan was kind of talking about some sleeper names out there. There's one guy that, he has not broken out in his NFL career yet, and I think he has a chance to do that today at the wide receiver position. And it's not Jalen Noel. It is Xavier Hutchinson, another receiver in that room from Iowa State. I swear everyone in that room is from Iowa State. That's kind of insane.
I love Iowa State.
But yeah, I like Xavier Hutchinson coming out of college. He's a big body receiver, 6'3", about 200, 215 pounds. I think he can come in and fill that Nico Collins role. Obviously not as effective, but I don't know what his prop yardage is. Probably around that 20 to 25 yards. I think that's just one big play for him. I think he's good vertical receiver, so he can just one play, and I think he can pop those over. So I like Xavier Hutchinson, and in deep leagues, I don't mind picking him up and starting him.
Yeah, I think that he's definitely a name that like in one of my leagues, dude, I have Puka, Garrett Wilson, Brian Thomas, Ricky Pearsall. Like my receiver room the past few weeks have been through hell. Like it's brutal. So I was sitting there looking at all these sleeper names. Tez Johnson obviously snagged him. He was my wide receiver 1. Then Alec Pierce is a guy that I look at after a big week last week. I think he's a sneaky deep touchdown play this week and could have a very nice game. And then the other guy I had mixed in there was Jaden Higgins, the other Texans teammate that has been mixing in the lineup too. So it has been a mix of Texans guys that have been, notable sleeper names this week. But one name I do want to talk about is Mason Taylor, who is active today. didn't cash in on the matchup last week. It struggled over the last 2 weeks. But Cincinnati, Steven, is allowing the most points to tight ends in fantasy football this year. They've allowed 9 touchdowns, 9 in their last 5 games. Like this is the place that you do want to be targeting the tight end position is against these Cincinnati Bengals this year. So I think Mason Taylor, a guy that I look at his player props today, they're down from what they've been. He's active today. I think that he has a nice day and, finds the end zone against Cincinnati. So if you're looking for some value, Mason Taylor is a good bet today for sure. Dylan in the chat here. What up? Full PPR pick 2 quarterbacks. Fields against Cincinnati. Cousins versus Miami. Dog shit defense. Maybe no longer. Rodgers versus Green Bay. Flacco. Steven, out of this grouping, who you going with?
Pick 2. I'm taking Fields, like we talked about. Even though he's been benched, but like you said, the rushing upside. If he gets 50 yards and a touchdown, you're fine. And then Cousins versus Miami. The matchup is there. Rodgers versus Green Bay, like you said, good defense, and then Flacco. I mean, I think I'm gonna rock with Fields, and I'm gonna go Kirk Cousins here against Miami. I think London's gonna play, but I think Kirk Cousins is gonna go out there and torch up that Miami defense. They've just been really bad against that. Miami's just bad. They're just bad all around. So I'm taking Kirk Cousins and Justin Fields.
I'm actually going to go with 2 guys in the same game. I'm going with Justin Fields. We mentioned that the Bengals defense has really struggled this year against quarterbacks. I mean, think last week, like Aaron Rodgers shredded this team through the air. Justin Fields should at least be able to get to 200 yards, which is basically throwing for 400 for him, in a game. So I think that Fields can have a nice day in fantasy football with his rushing upside, but I actually really like Joe Flacco this week as a streamer in a lot of leagues. The Jets defense is, no Sauce Gardner this week. They've been struggling this year to stop opposing offenses. And I think that Joe Flacco, what he showed in Cincinnati last week with what he can do with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins at his disposal, and even in the second half against Green Bay, it is a matchup that I think Joe Flacco can get to 20 points. And I think with this grouping, you're looking at what guys give me the best chance to get to 20 points this week. And I think Fields and Flacco do that. And with Cousins, the matchup's good, but let's say he only has 22 pass attempts. Like, I don't know if he gets to that 20-point threshold because they're going to be running the ball so much. So it is an interesting one for sure right there. Steven, all right, we'll talk about matchups here as well. What is your biggest upset potentially this week?
Upset, let me look at the slate. I could see...
Are you going to say the Eagles?
I mean, that's up. Yeah, as much as it pains me to say that, I could easily see the Eagles dropping this one. There's just something is wrong in Philadelphia. I don't really know what it is. There's just something ever since Orion Kirkering couldn't find home plate. It's just been bad over here in Philadelphia. So I could see the Eagles dropping this one, but I don't want to say that. So I could also see the Browns upsetting the Patriots in this one. I think that's going to be a low-scoring game. I really like Harold Fannin a lot this week as well against that New England defense that, they've been in the bottom half against tight ends. So I could see Harold Fannin cracking the end zone. But biggest upset, it pains me, but most likely it would be the Giants over the Eagles. I don't think it'll happen, but Giants will definitely cover that 7.5-point spread.
Yeah, 7.5 is a crazy spread. That's considering the home boost of 3 points too. Exactly. So they're expecting a 10.5-point favorite. Vegas must know something that we don't. So interesting spread there. I think the one matchup that I'm looking at, which is interesting right now, is the Broncos being favored by 3.5 at home. That's basically a 6.5-point spread over the Dallas Cowboys, and this Broncos team has just not been super impressive this year. They have their 5-2 record feels a little bit fraudulent with how they've been playing, especially last week relying on a crazy comeback in order to beat the Giants. The Dallas Cowboys offense is going to be a tough test for this Broncos defense. And let's say the Broncos defense doesn't have a good day. Like, it's going to be up to Bo Nix in order to, carry the torch. And has he been able to do that consistently this year? I'm not buying that. Bo Nix has not been that great this year. So if I'm picking an upset, like the Dallas Cowboys against the Broncos, this is a matchup that I think, I want to target. I like the Cowboys to cover in that one. And I do love some player props in there. And the one guy that I keep finding myself targeting it's CeeDee Lamb. And here's why. A lot of people think Surtain is going to be following CeeDee Lamb the entire time. Lamb operates from the slot. The guy that's going to struggle the most is George Pickens on the outside against him. So Lamb in the slot is going to get Riley Moss, Jahdae Barron. Like, he's going to have some plus matchups there that he's going to be able to exploit. So should work out in the Cowboys' favor. We will see. All right, we're going to be wrapping this thing up here. Should I trade Oronde Gadsden and Trey Benson for Tet and Josh Downs and half PPR? The rest of his team is Patrick Mahomes, Drake London, George Pickens, Deebo Samuel, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Oronde Gadsden, Jalen Warren. Has a bench of McBride, ETN, Algier, Tootin Benson, and Chris Moore. This team's loaded. Jeez.
This is a loaded team.
So this is an elite team. So in terms of this trade right here, I'm going to recommend, yes, you need to sell high on Oronde Gadsden while you still can. There's 4 mouths to feed for the Los Angeles Chargers. It is going to be volatile, and Gadsden has had plus matchups to cash in on over the past few weeks. I think that he will regress, and this is the highest point his value will be. Do I think he'll be outside the top 12 tight ends? No, but you also have Trey McBride, so that helps things out. Ted McMillan, very favorable schedule down the stretch, and, Josh Downs is definitely a buy low candidate for a lot of people right now. And Trey Benson, with your running back room, I'm not necessarily super worried. Bijan and Taylor in the same RB room is absolutely diabolical work. So shout out to you for being able to cook that up. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. As much as I like Trey Benson and Gadsden the rest of the season, but I mean, the best player here is Tet. And if you can add Tet, and like you said, you have McBride and then you have Bijan and Taylor. So your running back room is just completely set. And McBride, you don't have to worry about a tight end after this week. You're locked and loaded the rest of the season. So if you can go out and get Tet, the best player in this trade, and I still have hope for Josh Downs. I still think he can have a good second half of the season. To me, this is a no-brainer. I'm taking Tet.
Yep, 100%. Well, hey, listen, guys, we really appreciate you guys tuning into this morning episode of Start and Sit Fantasy Football Advice. If we did miss your question, just go to my Twitter at @blitzlink_. I'm answering questions up until kickoff today. Steven, should be a great slate. Really appreciate all you guys tuning in. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, and we will catch you guys next time.